Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Spider-Man Commander deck techs. The Spider-Man set has a huge number of legendary creatures, so I wanted to showcase some of the coolest commander options from among them. I'm releasing a new Spider-Man Commander deck every Thursday through mid-November when the Avatar set drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. So if you have a request for a specific commander you'd like to see me build, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today we're doing something a little different. I've put two cards in our command zone, Silk Webweaver and Spider-Man India. Both of these characters come from the multiversal nature of the Spider-Man comics, although in different ways. Cindy Moon, codenamed Silk, comes from the main Marvel universe, and was bitten by the same radioactive spider as Peter Parker, but is also the avatar of a spider totem through what's called the Web of Life and Destiny. Pavitra Prabhaka, or Spider-Man India, is a really fun alternate universe version of Spider-Man, with his own analogs to Aunt May, Doc Ock, and others. I first learned about Pavitra in the Across the Spider-Verse movie, and he's just great in it. So before we get into what connects these characters and to our deck tech, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build around my commander. I want to show off why it or they are so cool and what they can do for me in the command zone. So whatever they ask of me, I put 30 cards toward that. It's our game plan. It's what we try to do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go toward these three categories of supporting that game plan: card advantage, acceleration, and interaction. I usually run one or two sweepers just to reset the board in case we need to. Sometimes I'll run more if that would play into the game plan. Sometimes, like today, I dispense with it altogether. But I almost always keep to my floor of 38 lands so I can hit my land drops and play the game. So let's talk about our commanders, starting with Silk. Silk Webweaver is a 3/5 legendary spider-human hero for 2 a green and a white, but Silk has web slinging for 1 a green and a white. Web slinging is an alternate casting cost that lets us pay this amount rather than this amount, as long as we also return a tapped creature we control to its owner's hand. So if we have a tapped creature, we can bounce it and pay 1 less to play Silk. In addition, whenever we cast a creature spell, we make a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token while Silk is on the battlefield, so it feels like we're back in New Capenna. And Silk can give us the ability to pay 3 a green and a white, and all of our creatures get +2/+2 and vigilance until end of turn. Pretty sweet. Spider-Man India is a 4/4 legendary spider-human hero for 3 a green and a white, but has the same web-slinging ability for the same cost. And also, whenever we cast a creature spell, we put a +1/+1 counter on target creature we control, and it gains flying until end of turn. So, similar, but different. Most notably, as you can see, these cards do not have the partner ability, so we're not actually allowed to designate them both as our commanders by the rules. But you know, if your pod is amenable, they may have no problem letting you rule zero these two into the zone together. After all, it's Commander. We should play the way that's most fun for everyone. Another way to use this deck, though, is to choose which of these commanders you want to use based on what you want to do when you sit down to play. Building a deck that can accommodate 2 different commanders with overlapping but distinct playstyles gives you ways to customize your experience every time you shuffle up, and that's one of the great strengths of the format. Either way you do this will be a good time. I'd like to give advice on how to rebuild the deck for each of these commander options, but it's a little funny how well they work together. Cindy is 4 mana and Pavitra is 5, but they both can web sling out for just 1 a green and a white. They both reward us for casting creature spells, Cindy building out our board with tokens, and Pavitra putting a counter on someone, maybe himself, and making them evasive. But Cindy can also pump the team, giving vigilance instead of flying, and acting as a mana sink for later in the game when we want to push damage or strengthen our blockers. So while these cards do different things, and their differences do matter, they play together so well. I know the Spider-Man set's design process was a little unique, but these two spider people feel like they're meant to be on a team, and they don't even have the rules text that refers to spiders like some of the other legends in the set. See this video's description for my Miles Morales deck, in which both of these friends appear. So what does this team do? Well, it's a classic Selesnya deck in some ways, with token producers and counters galore, but we also have a couple of wrinkles to our play pattern. Since our commanders since they both care about casting spells and, with their web-slinging abilities, replaying those spells, I wanted to ensure that shuffling our creatures between our hand and the battlefield would give us plenty of value every time, so we have a theme of interest triggers to do just that. From creatures who trigger when they enter, to permanents that trigger when other creatures enter, we have ways of making tokens, interacting with our opponents, protecting ourselves, ramping, 2 ways of becoming the monarch, and more. Now, if we want to do some web slinging, we need ways of tapping our creatures other than just attacking. So we have a number of outlets to do that, ways to tap down our creatures for mana or card advantage without risking them in combat, plus a few spacecraft from Edge of Eternities that our team can crew, and even ways to make tokens that enter tapped. Tokens are great to bounce with web slinging because we can always make more of them. And since we're using web slinging to play our cards multiple times, we can lean into that by including ways beyond just web slinging to rebuy our creatures. Self-bounce effects, flickering, even a little graveyard recursion round out our plans. They aren't web slinging themselves, but we get so much out of them that they deserve an honorary qualification, which is, of course, the reason for the deck name. If you're not familiar with this quote from the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, do yourself a favor and click the link in the comments. I've been laughing about this for over 20 years. Oh no. You'll enjoy this deck if you like building up a board of creatures great and small, which work together in harmony, or if you like feeling like you've found an infinite value glitch that gives you more good stuff every time you play your cards. So as usual, this Moxfield list that we're going to be going over today is in the video's description. At the bottom of the Moxfield list, below the deck, you will see a considering section, which includes a bunch of cards that I did think about including, but decided ultimately not to. If you have a different budget that you want to build this deck for, either bigger or smaller, the considering section is a great place to get started for different ideas on how to improve the deck, make it fit what you need, or focus on a specific strategy if you like it more than others. So we're going to start with our Enters Triggers section, and it's big. We've got a lot of cards that care about just coming into the battlefield, and if we are able to rebuy them or bounce them to our hand with web slinging and play them again, we get a lot of good value off of that. We're going to start with Distinguished Conjurer from Modern Horizons 3, but originally from Jumpstart 22. Distinguished Conjurer is a 1/2 human wizard for 1 and a white that says whenever another creature we control enters, we gain 1 life. So it's a soul sister. It gives us the ability to gain life, over and over and over as we're making tokens and playing our creatures. In addition, we can pay 4 and a white and tap the Conjurer to flicker one of our creatures, exile a target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. When it re-enters, of course, it will trigger this first ability again, we'll gain another life. So pretty nice way to give us a buffer of life while we're building up our team. Gallant Citizen is one of the couple of cards we could have put in this deck. It's a 1/1 human citizen for 2 hybrid Selesnya mana. So we can pay this as a white and a green and a green, or a white and a white. And when it enters, we draw a card. I could have put Helpful Hunter from Foundations in this, or even Spirited Companion from Neon Dynasty, both of which cost 1 and a white. This is a little more restrictive because it needs 2 kinds of colored mana, but it's from the Spider-Man set and it's thematic, so yeah. Eternal Witness, just a classic card. 1 and double green for a 2/1 human shaman that when it enters, we can return a card from our graveyard to our hand. Just regrowth on a 2/1 body. We want this so that any of our creatures that die, or any of our other things that go to the graveyard, maybe we've cast a sorcery or something and we want it back, we can get it back with Eternal Witness. Fierce Empath is really good in this deck. 2 and a green for a 1/1 elf that when it enters, we can search our library for a creature card with mana value 6 or greater, reveal it, put it into our hand, and shuffle. Now I know you're thinking, how many cards in this deck are mana value 6 or greater? Quite a few. We've got a couple of big ones in here. So I want to be able to get those if we need them once we've got the mana to cast them, or ways to get them into play otherwise, and Fierce Empath will do that for us. Next up is Lauren of the Third Path, my favorite Reclamation Sage. 2 and a white for a 2/1 legendary human artificer with vigilance, that when she enters, Lauren will destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So just a great way for us to do a little bit of removal, but also Lauren has the ability, once she's no longer summoning sick, to tap, and we and another opponent each draw a card. This isn't just good for us to get a card, and good for us to politic with our opponent and say, if I let you draw a card, will you leave me alone for a turn cycle? Will you give me the benefit of whatever your card is doing? not only do we get that, but this taps Lauren, which means Lauren is now tapped and we can web sling out one of our commanders with her. Pretty good. And of course, when we replay her, she'll blow something else up. Next up, we have Rishkar, Pima Renegade. Just goes in every green counters deck. 2 and a green for a 2/2 legendary elf druid that says when Rishkar enters, we put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, and each creature we control with a counter can tap for green mana. Just a nice way to turn our creatures into mana dorks, to put counters on them, and not just that, to tap them. So we can use them to web sling out our commanders or the other couple of web slinging cards we have in the deck. If we put the counter, one of these 2 counters on Rishkar, then we can tap Rishkar for mana next turn, use that mana as part of the cost for web slinging, bounce Rishkar, and then we replay Rishkar, either that turn or the following one, and we get 2 more counters, which again could go on Rishkar. At least one of them. Next, from Tarkir Dragonstorm, Warden of the Grove. It does everything we want in this deck. 2 and a green. For a Hydra, it's a 2/2, that says at the beginning of our end step, we put a 1/1 counter on Warden of the Grove. And then, whenever another non-token creature we control enters, it endures X, where X is the number of counters on Warden of the Grove. So endure means either we put X 1/1 counters on that creature, or we make a white spirit creature token with power and toughness X. XX, I should say. So the Warden of the Grove, every time we have a creature enter that isn't a token, is either going to put counters on that creature, or we're going to make another creature, just like Silk does, but instead of being a 1/1 citizen, it's going to be an XX based on the number of counters we have in Warden of the Grove, and the Warden will grow bigger every turn. So this is really excellent for us to build out our board both wide and tall. Next is Felidar Retreat. 3 and a white for an enchantment with landfall that says whenever a land we control enters, we choose to either make a 2/2 white cat beast creature token, or put a 1/1 counter on each of our creatures and they gain vigilance till end of turn. So if we're low on creatures, we make some cat beasts. If we have enough creatures, or we just need them to be a little bit bigger, or we want to take advantage of things like the ability that Rishkar gives our creatures with counters to tap for green, we can put counters on all of our creatures, then attack with them with vigilance, and then post-combat use that ability Rishkar gives them to tap for green and cast more spells. Felidar Retreat is a great way for us to do, again, both of the things that we're trying to do a lot of in this deck. Next, we have Resto Angel. Restoration Angel is 3 and a white for a 3/4 angel with flash and flying that says when this creature enters, you may exile target non-angel creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Really wonderful. Just a way to protect our creatures, a way to rebuy our enters triggers by flashing in maybe after blockers, and then we flicker the creature we had, it comes back, it's no longer blocking, but the creature that it blocked is still blocked, and of course, we get the enters trigger again. Restoration Angel, you've got to put it in a flicker deck if you're running white. The Sad Robot, Solemn Simulacrum. I really love this card. I'm glad they put it in Foundations and made it even cheaper than it was. For 4 generic mana, we get a 2/2 artifact creature golem that, when it enters, we rampant growth. We search our library for a basic land, we put it on the battlefield tapped, and we shuffle our library. And then, when the Sad Robot dies, we can draw a card. So both of these are maze, we don't have to do it, but generally we're going to. So being able to flicker our Sad Robot, or maybe we attack with it, and it doesn't die, so we don't draw a card, but now it's tapped and we can bounce it with web slinging and replay it and rampant growth again. Lots of fun. Acidic Slime. I don't usually put acidic slimes in my deck, but it's just very strong. 3 and double green for a 2/2 ooze with Death Touch that says when it enters, we destroy an artifact, an enchantment, or a land. Usually we don't want to keep replaying Acidic Slime or flickering it and blowing up our opponent's land bases, but I guess we could. Generally though, this is in the deck to be a naturalize, to be a disenchant, to blow up artifacts or enchantments that are problematic at the table. But this is also there if our opponent's running some kind of problematic land, something like a Rogue's Passage in their Voltron deck, or a Mazaveth in their control deck. Whatever it may be that's stopping us from doing what we're doing, if they're using a land to do it, let's get rid of that land. Next, we have one of our spacecraft. This is Atmospheric Greenhouse. For 4 and a green, we get a 5/4 spacecraft that says when it enters, we put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. That does not count the spacecraft, because if you haven't seen spacecraft before, the way this works is this is just an artifact. It comes in, it does this, and it has the station ability, which means at sorcery speed, we can tap another creature we control to put charge counters on the greenhouse equal to the creatures that we tapped's power. So if we tap a 2/2, we'll put 2 counters on this thing. If we tap a 4/4 after that, we put 4 more counters on it. It's now got 6 counters. And once it has 8 counters, it becomes a 5/4 flying trampling creature. So yeah, it's a way for us to tap our creatures down and thereby access web slinging or any of the other things we want to access with that. And eventually we have a 5/4 Flampler. That's pretty good. And it put a counter on all of our stuff when it came in. Sounds good to me. Next is Karametra, God of Harvests. Love this card. 3 and a green and a white for a 6/7 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. But if you haven't seen these original Theros gods before, as long as our devotion to green and white is less than 7, Karametra isn't a creature. Now what is devotion? Devotion means we look at all the permanents that we control on the battlefield and we count up their pips. This is a green pip and this is a white pip. And if we have a total of green plus white of 7 or more, Karametra is a creature. Otherwise, Karametra is just an enchantment. She's still legendary, but she's not a creature or a god, she's just an enchantment. So if we were to say have Atmospheric Greenhouse and Acidic Slime and Karametra in play, that is a devotion of 4 green, because 1, 2, 3, 4 green pips, and 1 white, so that's 5. That's not enough for Karametra to be a creature. But if we get 2 more, either 2 white, 2 green, or 1 of each, as long as we have that, Karametra is a creature and is a 6/7 indestructible. But even without all that, Karametra says whenever we cast a creature spell, we may search our library for a forest or plains card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. That's great because it means we get a free, it's not just rampant growth, because it does not say a basic forest or basic plains. We can go find a typed dual land if we have one. I've put 1 of them in this deck, but there are plenty of others you can put in if you want to have tap lands come in. I thought that this deck needed to be a little bit faster than those tap lands, but maybe a bicycle land or having a one of the tapped duels from Dominaria United or from Kaldheim, any of these would be great. Plus, if you're running one of the nicer ones, like the Surveil lands or the Shock lands, you can also pull one of those. And that's every time we cast a creature spell. We just get to put another land into play. Thanks, Karametra. Next, we have Karmic Guide. Karmic Guide, what a great card. 3 and double white for a 2/2 Angel Spirit. So we cannot flicker this with Restoration Angel because it's an angel. But it is a 2/2 flyer with protection from black that has Echo for 3 and double white. Echo means at the beginning of our upkeep, if we controlled Karmic Guide last turn, but not since our last upkeep, essentially if it came into play last turn, we have to pay its Echo cost or sacrifice it, which means we've got to pay for it twice. That's a little bit of a downside, but when it enters, we get to return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. So this is a 5 mana spell that reanimates a creature and gives us a 2/2 flying protection from black Angel Spirit. We do have to pay for it a second time, but we could probably afford to, especially with all the ways that we have to tap our creatures for mana. And if we're willing to let this just go, that's okay too. Sometimes paying 5 mana to reanimate something is worth it, and just having a 2/2 flying pro-black blocker for a turn, that's alright too. Next is Maha, Bredegard Protector. Maha is a 2/3 legendary human warrior from Kaldheim for 2, a green and double white that gives all of our creatures +1/+1. Thanks, Maha. And she has landfall. Whenever a land we control enters, we make a 1/1 white human warrior creature token. So it's a 1/1 warrior, but it's also getting an Anthem effect. So it's a 2/2 as long as Maha is in play. So it's sort of like she is our very own extra Felidar Retreat. Even though if we have the Felidar Retreat Cat Beasts in play, they will become 3/3s thanks to Maha. So yeah, extra landfall to make more tokens and pump up all of our creatures. Sounds good to me. Next we have one of our other spider people. It's Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary. I'm just have a special affection for this card. I think it's pretty fun. 4 and a green for a 4/3 legendary human spider hero with web slinging for 2 and a green. So a little easier to web sling than one of our 2 commanders. But also, when Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary enters, we search our library for basic land, put it in the battlefield, tapped, and shuffle. We rampant growth. So that means we're going to be able to web sling out Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary and hopefully bounce or flicker him and do it again. And web sling out our commander with him, and then sling him out too. We can go back and forth as long as we're able to get those creatures in play tapped down first. Seems like a lot of fun. I do want to make mention, though, for anyone who's new to Magic and isn't aware of how this works, the text of this card says, when Spider-Man enters. When a card refers to itself by name, it is only referring to itself. This does not trigger this ability anytime any other card comes in, even if that card is also Spider-Man, like Spider-Man India. Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary will only trigger this second ability when it enters. Just want to be clear about that. Next up is Archon of Coronation. We've got a 5/5 Archon for 4 and double white. It has flying, and when it enters, we become the Monarch. The Monarch is a very simple mechanic. What it means is someone is the Monarch, and there will always be a Monarch for the rest of the game of Commander. Whenever you are the Monarch and you go to your end step, you get to draw a card. That's one of the 2 things that you care about. The second thing is, whenever someone deals damage, combat damage, to the Monarch, the person who dealt the combat damage becomes the Monarch. So it encourages people to attack and to attack the Monarch because they want that card draw during their end step. Archon of Coronation gets this all rolling. When it enters, we become the Monarch. And it's also important to recognize that we become the Monarch even if there already is a Monarch. So if someone else has taken the monarchy from us and we've bounced Archon of Coronation and replayed it, we will become the Monarch again simply by Archon of Coronation's ability resolving. Because that's the only other way to take the monarchy besides doing combat damage to the person who already is the Monarch. And as long as we are the Monarch, damage doesn't cause us to lose life. So we're going to be able to take damage, but we won't lose any life from it. That means that we can still lose the monarchy, but until we do, we are pretty well protected. Seems good. Next is Gruff Triplets from Wilds of Eldraine. I played the heck out of this in Standard. 3 and triple green for a 3/3 Satyr Warrior with Trample that says when this creature enters, if it isn't a token, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. So you play the Gruff Triplets and you get 3 3/3s with Trample. Each of which has the ability, when this creature dies, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to its power on each creature you control named Gruff Triplets. So that means if one of our Gruff Triplets dies, whether it was the token, or the other token, or the original, the other 2 will get 3 +1/+1 counters and will become 6/6 tramplers. If one of those then dies, the remaining one will get 6 +1/+1 counters and become a 12/12 trample. If you kill 2 Gruff Triplets at the same time, or all 3, then counters don't have anywhere to go. But what's nice about this is being able to attack with a 3/3 trample, sometimes it gets killed, but sometimes it gets through. And if it gets through, that means you can bounce the original Gruff Triplets using web slinging, replay it, and you get 2 more triplets. So now you have Gruff Quintuplets, and they're all named Gruff Triplets, however, so any of them that die puts counters on the other ones. Next we have Kogla the Titan Ape. 3 and triple green for a 7/6 legendary ape. Love Kogla. That says when it enters, it fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. Fight, if you don't know, means that Kogla will deal 7 damage to that creature, 7 is his power, and that creature will deal damage equal to its power to Kogla, which could kill Kogla, so hopefully you want to choose a target creature that will not survive the fight, but Kogla will. And whenever Kogla attacks, we can destroy an artifact or enchantment that the defending player controls. He's just a big ape and wants to break things. In addition, however, for 1 and a green, we can return a human we control to our hand, and Kogla will gain indestructible until end of turn. This does not have to be activated during combat or any particular time. Once Kogla has been targeted by something, we can do this whenever we want. We can even do it multiple times in the same turn, and Kogla will just get indestructible multiple times, and they all sort of overlap and it doesn't matter. What's nice about this is every one of our creatures that has web slinging is human. So we can bounce those things, replay them, and get their interest triggers, or the triggers of our commander or other commanders that have an on-cast ability. Like when Silk or Spider-Man India see a creature spell be cast, they're going to either make that token or put a counter on something and give it flying. Kogla is a great way for us to keep redoing that. I think we have 15 humans in this deck. Is that right? 16 humans in this deck, including our commanders. So yeah, Kogla being able to give us these kind of rebuys is really excellent. And of course, protects the ape. We love the ape. Next is Regal Behemoth. Regal Behemoth is a 5/5 dinosaur with trample for 4 and double green. So it's not quite Colossal Dreadmaw, except that when it enters, we become the monarch. So another way for us to be crowned regent. Whenever we tap a land for mana while we are the monarch, we also add 1 mana of any color. It doesn't even have to be the same color that we added with our land. So Regal Behemoth gives us a way to ramp ourselves once we're the monarch. And if we have untapped lands after we've cast this for 6, we can go ahead and do it right away. Seems pretty fun. Next, our other form of recursion besides our Karmic Guide is Sun Titan. Sun Titan is 4 and double white for a 6/6 giant with vigilance. A 6/6 vigilance creature, that's pretty good on its own, but even better when it enters or attacks. Enters or attacks, both happen. We can return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. Comes straight back into play. Now this obviously, mana value 3 or less, cannot hit our commanders if they happen to have gone to the graveyard, so we don't probably want to put them in the graveyard. But we have so many other permanents that this can hit. In addition, it just says permanent. It does not say non-land permanent. So if we have some lands that have gone into the graveyard from being milled or being discarded, maybe being sacrificed, this can bring them back for us. And that'll happen every time, again, that this enters, but also attacks. The only downside to Sun Titan in our deck is that it has Vigilance, which means that we can't bounce it to our hand using web slinging because it's not tapping to attack. Maybe we can tap it in other ways. Next we have Surak and Goreclaw from March of the Machine. 4 and double green for a 6/5 legendary human bear, because it's a human and a bear. That's important to recognize because this is a human, so Kogla can bounce it. So Surak and Goreclaw has trample and gives all of our other creatures trample, so there's some evasion for us. In addition, whenever another non-token creature we control enters, we put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it gains haste until end of turn. So we're getting our enters triggers, we're getting 1/1 counters, we're getting haste, and we already have trample. Pretty sweet. Next is Sweet Gum Recluse. This is a spider in our Spider-Man deck. Who would have thought? For 4 and double green, we have a 0/3 spider with flash and reach, and when it enters, we put 3 +1/+1 counters on each of any number of target creatures that entered this turn. As long as they came in already before the Recluse comes in, they each get 3 1/1 counters. But why would you pay for that on a 0/3 flash reach spider? Why would you pay 6? Well, because it has Cascade. Now, it doesn't have Cascade, the rules text for it written out on this card because there's a lot of rules text to Cascade, and we had other things to do with the Recluse. But this is a classic Cascade card. The way Cascade works is when we cast the Recluse, we exile cards from the top of our library until we hit a non-land that costs less than the Recluse. So whatever non-land that costs 5 mana or less, we have cascaded into that. We then get to cast it without paying its mana cost. It will resolve before the Recluse does, it'll go onto the battlefield, and assuming it was a creature, when the Recluse finally resolves, it will enter and put 3 counters on that creature that we just cast because it entered this turn. So yes, Sweet Gum Recluse, really great if we have some other effects in play. For example, if we have Silk in play, we cast the Recluse, and Cascade can go on the stack at the same time Silk's ability does. As long as they both resolve before the Recluse does, which they will, because that's how the stack works, whatever token Silk made will have entered the battlefield that turn, and so when the Recluse resolves, the token will become a 4/4. That seems pretty good. Next is Avenger of Zendikar, just a just a delight to play. 5 and double green for a 5/5 elemental that says when it enters, we make a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land we control. Just a whole mess of tokens. Imagine playing Avenger of Zendikar before Sweetgum Recluse. You play the Recluse, it comes in, it puts 3 counters on every one of those little plants. But we don't have to imagine it because we have a landfall ability. Whenever a land we control enters, we may put a 1/1 counter on each plant creature we control. Now, do we have any plants in our deck other than Avenger of Zendikar? No, even Avenger of Zendikar isn't a plant because it is an elemental. So the only plants we're going to see are these little tokens, but we're going to see a lot of them because it's each land we control. We're probably going to see at least 5 or 6 of those, and keep getting them bigger as we play more lands. Next, one of my favorites, it's Hornet Queen. I've been saying a lot of I love this card in this deck. Well, I've got a lot of cards in it I love. I love Magic. For 4 and triple green, we get a 2/2 flying Death Touch insect creature. But when it enters, it makes 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and Death Touch. So the Queen comes in and is a 2/2 Death Touch flyer and brings 4 1/1 Death Touch flyers with her. So yeah, this is delightful. It's just really nice. Flyers can get in, and we can pump them up if we want to. No one wants to block these things because they have Death Touch. No one wants to attack us because our flying insects have Death Touch. Yeah, Hornet Queen's great. Meteor Golem. We can't have an enters triggers deck without Meteor Golem. 7 generic mana for a 3/3 artifact creature golem, and it says whenever it enters, we destroy a non-land permanent an opponent controls. Just classic, simple removal, and so cheap in Foundations. Such a great card. Being able to replay this, yeah, just getting more and more value out of blowing up the scariest thing in the battlefield every time. Next, we have Overlord of the Mistmoors from Duskmourn. For 5 and double white, we get an enchantment creature, Avatar Horror, that is a 6/6. And its ability is, when it enters or attacks, we make 2 2/1 white insect creature tokens with flying. We make 2 moths, basically. This is the same way that the Sun Titan works. It triggers on enter and on attack. So if we attack with our 6/6, yeah, it doesn't have vigilance the way the Sun Titan does, but it does make 2 flying friends that we get to just hang on to, in addition to the ones it made when it enters. Now that's all true of the Overlord, but the Overlord also has Impending 4 for 2 and double white. What that means is, if we cast it for its impending cost, which is 2 and double white, rather than this 7 mana casting cost, it will enter with 4 time counters on it. It will not be a creature until we remove the last counter, and at the beginning of our end step, we will remove a counter from it. Now it still did enter, so it will still make the 2 bugs. So essentially we get 2 2/1 flyers for 4 mana, and then 4 turns later, at the end of that turn, or rather 3 turns later really, because we put 4 time counters on it, we remove 1 this turn, and at the end of the 3rd turn after that, we will take the 4th counter off of it, and it will just become a 6/6 creature. It'll have just been sitting with our enchantments until then. Then we can attack with it in the following turn, make more tokens. Yeah, seems really fun. Oh, I guess I should also mention, if we have a way to flicker this, it is an enchantment, not a creature. But if we have a way to flicker an enchantment, we can impend this, put it on the battlefield, make our 2 flyers, flicker it as an enchantment, and it will return as a new game object with no memory of the fact that it was impended the first time, which means it will come in unimpended. It'll be a 6/6, we'll make 2 more flyers. Yeah, good times. Next up, I've been looking for a place to put Somberwild Beastmaster for a long time. I think this is the deck. For 6 and a green, we get a 1/1 Human Ranger. But when it enters, we make a 2/2 Wolf, a 3/3 Beast, and a 4/4 Beast. So we get 2 Beasts and a Wolf to go with our Ranger. So we have, what is that? A total of 10 power among the Beastmaster and all of their beasts for 7 mana. But in addition, all of our creature tokens, not just these ones, all of our creature tokens have Death Touch. So all those things I said about the Hornet Queen's Hornets are true of every one of our tokens now, except for the flying part, of course. So yeah, Somberwild Beastmaster, just a great way to make our tokens more deadly and more evasive because of that. and also gives us plenty of tokens to just hang out with us. Next up, we have one of our finishers. It's Moonshaker Cavalry. Moonshaker Cavalry is a little expensive for this deck, but the deck itself is pretty inexpensive compared to some of the decks out there. I think this is worth doing. But of course, if it's too pricey for you, there are plenty of other options that work pretty well as well in the considering section at the bottom of the Moxfield page. But what does the Cavalry do? Moonshaker Cavalry is 5 and triple white for a 6/6 flying Spirit Knight that says when it enters, creatures we control gain flying and get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures we control. So if we're sitting on 6 creatures, all of our creatures become flyers with +6/+6. It includes itself. Now, Moonshaker Cavalry does not itself have haste, but it does leave behind, a 6/6 flyer that makes a good blocker if our attack doesn't kill our last opponent. Maybe it just kills one of our opponents or 2 of them. So having a 6/6 flyer to block after that is pretty nice, especially when we could flicker this if we want to, either on a later turn and do it all again, or on the same turn with something like Restoration Angel maybe, and now everything gets that same bonus again. Seems fun. Next we have Apex Altasaur. Recently featured this in a Kogla and Yadaro deck. Check my March of the Machine decks playlist on my channel if you want to see that one. Lots of fun. Apex Altasaur is 7 and double green for a 10/10 dinosaur. It's a big dino that says when it enters, it fights up to 1 target creature we don't control, and it has Enrage. Whenever it's dealt damage, it fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. So it comes in, and maybe our opponent has like a 4/4. It will enter, and it will fight that 4/4 and kill it. The 4/4 will do 4 damage to it, and that will trigger its Enrage ability, and it will fight another creature. It does say up to 1 on both of these triggers, which means we don't have to have it fight. It doesn't just keep fighting creatures until it's dead, or until all the other creatures are gone. If you can have it fight until all the other creatures are gone, sounds good to me. It's a board wipe at that point. But yeah, Apex Altasaur can fight until the creatures you want removed are removed, whether or not that costs the Altasaur its life. But if it doesn't, Enrage will be able to trigger on later turns whenever it's dealt damage by something else, or we can flicker it or rebuy it. Maybe we attack with it and no one wants to block the 10/10, and we could bounce it to our hand using one of our commanders' web-slinging ability, then recast it and start the process all over again. Last of all, we have Primeval Protector for 11 mana. It's 10 and a green. We get a 10/10 avatar, but it costs 1 less for each creature our opponents control. So I've definitely cast this 10/10 avatar for a single green mana in the past. And it says when it enters, we put a 1/1 counter on each other creature we control. Each other creature, important, doesn't put 1 on the Protector. The Protector's going to stay at 10/10 for now. But still, sometimes, even if we're only paying 4 for this, 4 mana to put a 1/1 counter on everything and also have a 10/10 seems pretty good to me. So that covers our enters triggers. We have a lot of ways to supplement our game plan, but first, we're going to take a look at these 3 categories of support. We're going to start with our card advantage section. I have tagged this as draw, as I usually do in my videos. Doesn't mean that these all draw us cards, just that this is the shorthand for our card advantage section. So we've seen Gallant Citizen. It enters, draws us a card. Seems good. We've seen Fierce Empath. It enters, and we tutor for a mana value 6 or greater creature into our hand. That's card advantage as well. Next, we have Kutzil Malamet Exemplar. This is a 3/3 legendary cat warrior for 1, a green and a white, that says our opponents cannot cast spells during our turn. So that's good protection. If they want to remove our creatures, they're going to have to do it during their turns. And whenever 1 or more creatures we control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So this lets us draw cards whenever we hit our opponents with creatures that have counters on them, because base power is defined as whatever power is printed on the card. But if we have a creature that has been pumped up somehow, either by the counters that we're putting on several things, or that Spider-Man India is putting on things, or with the pump ability that Silk gives all of our creatures, each of those creatures when we hit, we're going to be able to draw a card from all of our creatures hitting a player. The way to look at this is you can't draw multiple cards from this ability unless you're doing damage to multiple players, because it's one or more creatures, but it's a player. So it will trigger multiple times if we attack multiple opponents. Worth thinking about. Next, we've seen Lauren of the Third Path. We can tap her to draw us and an opponent a card. Now we have Rumor Gatherer, great in any Selesnya deck that has a lot of creatures. 1 and double white for a 2/1 Elf Wizard from New Capenna with Alliance. Whenever another creature we control enters, we can scry one, and if it's the second time the ability has resolved, instead we draw a card. So that means every time a creature enters on a turn, except for the second time, we will scry. The first time we scry, the second time instead we draw, the third time we scry, the fourth time we scry, and so forth. So it's always it's always scrying except for the second time. And in this deck, if Silk is out, if Silk and Rumor Gatherer are out, all we have to do is cast any creature spell. Silk will trigger, we get a token that will trigger the Rumor Gatherer to scry, the original creature will resolve and enter, and Rumor Gatherer will then draw us a card. And then we'll be scrying any creature that enters after that. Next, we have Beast Whisperer. Just works in any green deck, basically. Beast Whisperer is 2 double green for a 2/3 Elf Druid that says when you cast a creature spell, draw a card. This is a cast trigger, not an enters trigger, but it feels like an enters trigger a lot of the time. We are getting a lot of tokens from triggered abilities, that's true, so we're not drawing off of those, but we have an awful lot of creatures in this deck, and each one of them with Beast Whisperer out is giving us an extra card. Elven Chorus is great next. 3 and a green for an enchantment that says you can look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library, and creatures you control can tap to add 1 mana of any color. Now this doesn't draw us cards, doesn't put cards in our hand, but it is still card advantage because we have 44 creatures in this deck, of which Elven Chorus is not one. 42 of those don't start in our command zone, which means that 42 cards in our 100 card deck, if we see it on top of our library, we can just play it from there, which is card advantage. It's putting an extra card into a place that we are able to cast it, so it doesn't have to be from our hand. This is pretty great, and like I mentioned, it doesn't just ramp us, it gives us a way to tap our creatures and thereby make them useful for web slinging. We've seen the Sad Robot. When it dies, we draw a card. Now it's time for Spider UK, our other web slinger in the deck. 3 and a white for a 3/4 legendary spider human hero with web slinging, 2 and a white. So just like Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary was 2 and a green, rather than 2 a white and a green, this is sort of the opposite of that, the mirror of that, I should say. And at the beginning of our end step, if 2 or more creatures entered the battlefield under our control this turn, we draw a card and gain 2 life. Another little bit of incidental life gain, but this, 2 or more creatures entering the battlefield, this is just a Silk trigger. If let's say we only have Silk in play, we cast Spider UK, Silk will trigger, making us a token, then Spider UK will enter, and at the end step, we've had that token and Spider UK enter, so 2 or more creatures entered under our control, we'll draw a card and gain 2 life. Seems pretty good. We've seen Archon of Coronation and Regal Behemoth, both of them make us the Monarch, so we're likely to draw a card during our end step, so those will put cards in our hand. And of course, Sweet Gum Recluse doesn't put cards in our hand, but it lets us cast something for free with Cascade. So that's good card advantage there too. That covers our card advantage section. Let's look now at our acceleration, which again, I've just shorthanded as ramp. We'll start with Avacyn's Pilgrim. Avacyn's Pilgrim is a 1/1 human monk for a single green, taps for white. That's great. It's a mana dork. It taps to add white that we can use to cast spells, and more importantly, it taps itself, or maybe not as importantly, but still importantly, the fact that it can tap itself means we can bounce it using web slinging, and it's so cheap to replay. The same is true of our Llanowar Elves, just a classic. I use the Dominaria 2018 printing because big fan of Dominaria, and just it's good art. Chris Ron, good job. Llanowar Elves is the same as Avacyn's Pilgrim, except it's an elf druid rather than a human monk, and it taps for green instead of white. Either way, we're getting the same kind of effect here, and we want that effect. Everyone knows Soul Ring, I hope. Soul Ring costs 1, taps for 2, It's so efficient and powerful, it goes in every deck. Springleaf Drum also works well in this deck. It's a single mana for an artifact that says if we tap it and tap an untapped creature we control, we can add 1 mana of any color. So by tapping the Springleaf Drum, we sort of make any creature into a Llanowar Elves or an Avacyn's Pilgrim, something that makes makes any color of mana. And that lets us tap something down, like I said, so that we can then use Web Slinging to bounce it. Next is Arcane Signet. Costs 2, taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So even if we're only using one of our 2 commanders in the command zone, it's still going to be taps for a white or a green. It's an untapped mana rock for 2. A 2 mana rock is great. Cryptolithrite is next. It does the same thing as Elven Chorus without giving us the ability to see the top of our library or cast things from it. Just 1 and a green. All our creatures can tap for 1 mana of any color. That's a good enchantment. And again, lets us tap our things down. Kami of Whispered Hopes is a little risky in this deck, like just a tiny little bit. It's a great card, 2 and a green for a 1/1 spirit. It can tap to add X mana of any 1 color where X is its power. And it says if 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a permanent we control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on that permanent instead. So it just adds an extra counter every time any number of counters are put on a permanent. It does not have the ability to put counters on itself, but we have plenty of ways to put counters on it among the cards that are in our deck. And when we do, it will have its replacement effect put more than just the one counter on it, which means it could then tap for even more mana. I say it's a little risky because I usually like Kami of Whispered Hopes in a deck that has a more heavily committed counter strategy, as opposed to this deck, which has a solid one, but not like 30 or more cards that are about counters. But I think every time it becomes useful, it's going to be pretty useful. And worst case scenario, it's a mana dork. Makes 1 mana for us, we can tap it and bounce it and play it again. Oketra's Monument is next. Oketra's Monument is 3 generic mana for a legendary artifact that makes all of our white creature spells cost 1 less to cast. That's pretty great. Most of our deck is our deck is actually very evenly split between white and green. I think it's just a slight, 1 card more green. But we have an awful lot of creatures, and many of them are white. So making them cost a single generic mana less does give us a pretty big discount throughout. In addition, that discount does apply to all of our white web-slinging creatures to discount their web-slinging cost, because web-slinging is an alternate casting cost. So this ability will discount that web-slinging cost, meaning our commanders can both be web-slung in for a single green and a white. In addition, whenever we cast a creature spell, we make a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. So this is almost like what Silk does, except that this is a 1/1 warrior and it has vigilance. So nice little extra kind of token for us. These vigilant tokens obviously aren't going to be tapped down when they attack, but we could sure tap them with things like Springleaf Drum or Cryptolithrite. We've seen Rishkar. Rishkar puts counters on our creatures, but also makes our creatures with counters have the ability to add 1 green. Of course we're running Supportive Parents. When I first saw this card, I did not think that this was all that good. Having played with it, it's excellent. 2 and a green for a 3/3 human citizen. It says tap 2 untapped creatures you control, add 1 mana of any color. That means as long as we've got some creatures untapped, we can tap them, and it's 2 for 1, 2 creatures for 1 mana, but it's any color, and it doesn't require Supportive Parents to be one of those creatures. Or if Supportive Parents is one of those creatures, we can still activate its ability again, even though Supportive Parents is tapped itself, to tap 2 other creatures, and then 2 other, and then 2 other. We can make a lot of mana with this, especially in this deck. We've seen Elven Chorus. It does the Cryptolithrite thing, but also has the ability to give us card advantage from the top of our library. Solemn Simulacrum, of course, comes in and Rampant Growths us. Karametra gives us the ability to tutor forests and plains from our library into the battlefield tapped every time we cast a creature spell. Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary enters and Rampant Growths us, and of course, Regal Behemoth makes our lands tap for 2 as long as we are the monarch. So that is our acceleration section. Let's talk now about our interaction, which again, just shorthanded as removal. So Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares are the same card with one distinction. They both cost a single white, they're both instants, and they both exile a target creature. They both also give that creature's controller a little kickback. Swords to Plowshares gives that creature's controller life equal to the power of the creature we exiled. Path to Exile lets that creature's controller rampant growth. These are both great spells. Swords is better, of course, but great ways to deal with just any creature on the battlefield that doesn't have, Hexproof or Shroud or something, protection from white. Emergency Eject is, I run this. I know some people like running things like Beast Within or Generous Gift. I think Emergency Eject is better. Strictly it's not, because it can't hit lands, where those two can. But what you get back from it, if you're not trying to blow up lands, which I'm not, is just more restrictive, even than Stroke of Midnight from Wilds of Eldraine, as a different way of doing the same effect. Those are all my opinions, but here's what the card does. 2 and a white for an instant that destroys target non-land permanent. Just any permanent that isn't a land that we can target, destroyed. And its controller makes a Lander token. A Lander token is a Wayfarer's Bauble. It's an artifact with pay 2, tap, and sack it to rampant growth. So I like this better than, Generous Gift and Beast Within, because even though they would get a 3/3 creature out of that, and those can hit lands, which again I'm not trying to do, or Stroke of Midnight, which is the same as Emergency Eject, but it gives them a 1/1 human token instead of a lander, it means that they're not getting a creature. They are getting land, but it's land that they have to pay for. They've got to spend their time and their mana finding that land, and it comes in tapped. So it's slow even if they do it right away. I think Emergency Eject is very strong for this reason, and I'm surprised that more people aren't running it. So Lorn of the Third Path, of course, enters and disenchants something. Touch the Spirit Realm is next. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment that says when it enters, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. So this is our Oblivion Ring for the deck. We're playing white, so we should be running an Oblivion Ring, or a Banishing Light, if you will. Touch the Spirit Realm also has a channel ability, however, which is while it's in our hand, we can pay 1 and a white and discard it to exile an artifact or creature and then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So this is what I call a slow flicker. It exiles and it doesn't come right back, it'll come back during the next end step. We can hit artifacts or creatures with it, and a lot of the time we're going to hit our own stuff. So if we don't need this as removal, we could certainly use this as a way to rebuy, / flicker our things. I guess, though, it's not our only Banishing Light, because we're running Web Up, which is just Banishing Light. It's the same thing we just saw, except it can hit any non-land permanent. 2 and a white, when it enters, exile a non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. So if we're going to run this kind of effect, we might as well run it Spider-Man themed. We've seen Acidic Slime. It can blow up artifacts, enchantments, or lands. Hopefully not that last one, but we'll see. We've seen Kogla, and how Kogla will fight something when he comes in, but also can just destroy an artifact or enchantment when he attacks. I guess I should also mention, this first trigger triggers when Kogla comes in. In response to our own trigger, we can activate Kogla's last ability and bounce one of our humans, give Kogla indestructible, so as long as he's going to kill something else, it doesn't matter if he would have died, he's now indestructible and can't. Pretty nice little interaction. Meteor Golem can hit any non-land permanent and destroy it, and Apex Altasaur fights things until we're done with it fighting, and then it just does it again every time it takes damage. So that covers all of our interaction. We're going to go through several different sections now of things that supplement our game plan, starting with our tap outlets. These are cards that either can tap themselves as creatures or give us a way to tap our creatures so that we can bounce them with web slinging. Afson's Pilgrim, and Land of War Elves, of course, are mana dorks that tap for mana. Springleaf Drum, if we tap it, we can tap another untapped creature to make a mana. It becomes tapped, of course. Cryptolith Rite, same thing, lets us tap our creatures for mana. We now have Lumen-class Frigate. This is our other spacecraft. For 1 and a white, this is a spacecraft that if we station it to 2, because remember, station lets us tap our creatures, that's why it's in this section, all it has to get is 2 charge counters on it, meaning we only have to tap 2 1/1 creatures or a single 2x creature, and it has 2 charge counters on it, and then gives all of our other creatures +1/+1. This is a great way to get an Anthem out for just 2 mana and tapping down maybe 1 creature, maybe 2 creatures. What's especially nice about this is now that these creatures, after we've stationed it up to 2 charge counters, now that these creatures have +1/+1, it makes it so their power is greater, so they can station the rest of the way up to the Lumen class frigate much faster. Which is good because it takes 12 to get to the next level and become a creature. But once it does, it's a flying, life-linking 3/5. So pretty sweet. Aetherdrift Harvester? Is that a 3/5 with lifelink if we pay an energy? Anyway. Adeline Resplendent Cathar is a strange card to put in this tap outlet section, but she's really good in this deck. Adeline Resplendent Cathar is 1 and double white for a star 4 legendary human knight with vigilance. Adeline's power is equal to the number of creatures we control. Just add them all up. And then whenever we attack, it doesn't say when Adeline attacks, just whenever we attack with anything. It could be a 1/1 citizen token. When we attack, for each opponent, we make a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. So if we have 3 different opponents, let's say Adeline is in play, and we have a citizen, we go to combat, we attack opponent A with a citizen. Adeline will trigger, and will make a 1/1 human, tapped and attacking opponent a human attacking opponent B, and another human attacking opponent C. And because we've just put 3 new creatures on the battlefield, Adeline's power will go from 2, because it was Adeline and the citizen before, to 5. Which is, again, total number of creatures that we control. If any of those little 1/1s attack and are not chump blocked, if they survive combat, we now have at least 1 creature that's tapped. So we can use it to cast one of our commanders or one of our other web slingers with web slinging. Kami Whispered Hopes, just like Land of War Elves and Avacyn's Pilgrim, is a mana dork, so we can tap it. It's a good way to bounce it. Lauren, of course, we can tap her to draw a card and have an opponent draw a card, so we can bounce her. Supportive Parents, like I said before, we tap it and some other creature, and we can bounce either or both of those. Elven Chorus, just like Cryptolith Rite, lets us tap creatures for mana. Atmospheric Greenhouse, just like the Lumen class frigate, lets us tap creatures to station it. Now we have one of the rooms from Duskmourn. This is Dazzling Theater or Prop Room. The way this works is this is a split card that's a permanent. So while it's in our hand, we can choose to cast either side of it. These are called doors, each side of it. We choose whichever door we want to cast, the Prop Room for 2 and a white, or the Dazzling Theater for 3 and a white. Let's say we're going to cast the Prop Room. And when we do, it enters, and the Prop Room is called Unlocked, and the Dazzling Theater is called Locked. What that means is, whichever side or sides are unlocked, this permanent has those abilities. So the Prop Room will come in if we cast it, and we will have this ability: untap each creature we control during each other player's untap step. And at sorcery speed, we can pay the cost of the other door to unlock it, and now we will have both sides available to us and in play. The Dazzling Theater says creature spells we cast have Convoke. So we can tap our creatures down to help pay for our other creature spells, meaning we're not just able to pay for the mana cost of those spells. It also means that the creatures that did so are now tapped and we can do things with them. Based on the order in which Convoke falls in casting a spell, we cannot convoke a creature to tap it and then have that creature be the one that we web sling back to our hand. We would have to web sling a creature back to our hand as part of putting our commander or whatever web slinger we have on the stack, which means that has happened before we've actually paid for it, which is when Convoke comes in. So sorry, it doesn't work together that way. I don't believe I'm wrong about that, but if I am, let me know in the comments below. In any case, Dazzling Theater gives us the ability to tap our things down. That's pretty great, and then we don't have disadvantage from it because Prop Room lets us untap our creatures during each player's untap step. Finally, we, like I mentioned before with Silk, are running Web of Life and Destiny. This card is really, really cool, and it's expensive. For 6 and double green, we have an enchantment that itself just has Convoke. So we can have our many, many creatures pay for this. We may not have to tap any of our lands at all. What does it do, though? At the beginning of combat on our turn, we look at the top 5 cards of our library, and we may put a creature from among them onto the battlefield. We put the rest on the bottom of our library in a random order. So this is cheating a creature into play. cheating in the sense that we're not having to pay mana for it. We just call that cheating. We're not actually cheating at the game. This is something that is a little bit of a non-bow with, or not really non-bow, but it just doesn't interact with our commanders very well because we're not casting it. We're just putting it onto the battlefield. So if we were to do this with Silk in play, we wouldn't get a token. If we did this with Spider-Man India in play, we wouldn't get to put a counter on something and give it flying until end of turn. But we would get a free creature, and we have a lot of big creatures, so this is a pretty nice way for us to do that. If you look in the considering section, on the Moxfield page, of course, there are several other cards that are tagged as cheat cards, as is this one. I felt like they were not as good of a thematic fit for the deck, although they are fine if you want to go for those, or maybe you already have them in your collection and you want to put them in. I think it will be a great way to get your big stuff out. I just thought that this one was too thematic to leave out. So those are our tap outlets. We are going to look at the cards that I have tagged as Rebuy. These are ways for us to get creatures back into our hand or back onto the battlefield by having them leave it first. So we get to rebuy, it's called, our interest triggers. Distinguished Conjurer, of course, for a white and tap, we can flicker something. Touch the Spirit Realm, if we channel it for 1 and a white and discard it, we can slow flicker something. Restoration Angel, flicker something when it comes in. Spider UK and Spider-Man, both of course have web slinging, so that's letting us rebuy that way. Kogla lets us bounce a human to give him indestructible. And of course, Pegasus Guardian we haven't seen yet. So Pegasus Guardian is an adventure creature, which means this is a 3/3 Pegasus for 5 and a white that has flying, and at the beginning of our end step, if a permanent we controlled left the battlefield this turn, we make a 1/1 Pegasus creature token with flying. We can also rescue the foal. It's an instant speed adventure spell. The way this works is, while it's in our hand, we can either cast the Guardian as just a creature for 5 and a white, or we can cast Rescue the Foal, and when it resolves, the card will go into exile, and from there we can cast Pegasus Guardian just as a creature. We cannot cast the creature and then the spell, but if we cast the spell, we can cast the creature afterwards. What does Rescue the Foal do, however? It says exile target creature we control, and then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So it's just 2 mana to flicker something. A pretty good way for us to trigger the first half of it if we have, 8 mana available to us. We can flicker something, then cast the Pegasus Guardian, and at the end of at the beginning of our end step, a permanent will have left the battlefield this turn because we flickered it, and we'll make a Pegasus from that. So this is a nice way for us to get some payoff and continual token generation from our rebuying and our web slinging and what have you, and it gives us a way to do some of that ourselves. So that covers our rebuy section. Let's look at our recursion section. We've already seen both of these cards. Karmic Guide lets us bring a creature back from the graveyard to the battlefield, as does Sun Titan. It's any permanent with mana value 3 or less. So those are good ways for us to, again, get a kind of rebuy on our creatures that went to the graveyard, or permanents, I should say. We have a tokens section, of course. So let's take a look at what we can get from these. We've seen many of them, but not the first one. It's Spider-Girl, Legacy Hero. This is Mayday, Parker. Green and a white, a green and a white, for a 2/2 legendary Spider Human Hero. Another one of these. During our turn, Spider-Girl has flying, and when she leaves the battlefield, we make a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. The same kind of token that Silk makes. It's when she leaves the battlefield, but that doesn't only mean when she dies. We want to be able to attack with Spider-Girl so that she gets tapped down, so we can then either flicker her or web sling her. So she has flying to make it so it's harder for her to be blocked when we attack with her. And then when she leaves the battlefield, we make a citizen, and we get to have web slung something out, hopefully, with her. And then we should be able to play her again pretty quickly. A 2/2 for 2 that flies on our turn is already pretty good. So that is Spider-Girl. She makes citizens. Adeline makes attacking 1/1 humans. Oketra's Monument makes 1/1 warriors with vigilance. Warden of the Grove makes spirit creatures with a variable power and toughness based on the number of tokens or counters it has on it. Feldar Retreat makes 2/2 cat beasts. Maha makes 1/1 human warriors. Gruff triplets make copies of itself. The Pegasus Guardian makes 1/1 flying Pegasi. Could be either one. The Avenger of Zendikar makes 0/1 green plants. But now we have Galta and Mavrin. This one's so cool. Galta and Mavrin is 3 double green and double white for a 12/12 trampling legendary dinosaur vampire. Because Galta's here, but Mavrin is too. So the way Galta and Mavrin works is whenever we attack, doesn't have to be with Galta and Mavrin, but very well may be, we get to choose one. Either we make a tapped and attacking XX green dinosaur creature token with trample, where X is the greatest power among other attacking creatures. That means if we attack with Galta and Mavrin, we will not be making a 12/12. And if we don't attack with Galta and Mavrin, we still won't be making a 12/12, unless of course we're attacking with a different 12/12. So as long as we're attacking with anything, we will find the greatest power among our attacking creatures and make a tapped and attacking dino with the same power and toughness as the power of that other attacking creature. Or we will make X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. Either it's the biggest creature or the number of creatures we're attacking with. And this second one will make tokens if we attack with Galta and Mavrin, because it doesn't care about Galta and Mavrin being big, it just cares that it's one creature. So in addition, the dinosaur we make is tapped and attacking. The vampires are not either of those, which means they're untapped and ready to block with lifelink. So Galta and Mavrin, a great way for us to get more and more tokens into play if we want to go wide with them or tall. We've seen Hornet Queen. She makes 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch. We've seen the Overlord of the Mistborns. It makes 2/1 white insect creature tokens with flying. The Somberwald Beastmaster makes a wolf and a beast and another beast. And here is another room for us. This is Dollmaker Shop and Porcelain Gallery. The Dollmaker Shop door is 1 and a white that says whenever one or more non-toy creatures we control attack a player, we make a 1/1 white toy artifact creature token. It's not attacked, or rather, it's not tapped and attacking, so we just get a little toy. It is a creature though. And Porcelain Gallery, for 4 and double white, says creatures we control have base power and toughness, each equal to the number of creatures we control. So if we have 3 creatures, all of our creatures, base power and toughness, become 3/3s, which means, sorry Galta and Mavrin, you're a 3/3 now. But if we have 20 creatures, some of which would have been 1/1 white toys, every one of those creatures is a 20/20. So Porcelain Gallery, it's a little bit of feast and famine, depending on how we're playing it out. Obviously, I would play the Dollmaker Shop first, attack a few times, get a few toys, and by the time we've got our Porcelain Gallery side unlocked, we're going to be able to have our creatures be, 6/6s, 8/8s, something like that. Still pretty good. So, next is our counters section. We've seen our tokens, let's look at our counters. Again, it doesn't look like that many cards, but it does put in plenty of work, especially with Pavitra doing his deal of putting counters on things in our command zone. So Kami of Whispered Hopes, of course, doesn't put counters on things, but gets the counters that we put on things and adds one to them. Rishkar puts 2 counters on something when Rishkar enters. Warden of the Grove makes it so anytime anything enters, if we endure X and choose counters, it'll put a number of counters on that thing equal to the counters that are on Warden of the Grove. Feldar Retreat, when we trigger landfall, we can put a 1/1 counter on each of our creatures. The same thing is true for Atmospheric Greenhouse when it enters, 1/1 counter on each of our creatures. Same thing is true for Primeval Protector, 1/1 counter on each of our creatures when it enters. Surek and Goreclaw can give us a 1/1 counter on each non-token creature we have that enters under our control, while Surek and Goreclaw is already on the battlefield. And of course, Sweet Gum Recluse puts 3 1/1 counters on each of the creatures we've had enter the battlefield the turn that the Recluse comes in after them. So those are our counters. We have Anthems as well. These are ways to pump up our team that don't require counters, because if we haven't had any counters come out yet, we still want our team to be bigger, and Silk has an Anthem effect that we can activate on her, but we also have the Lumen class frigate. As long as it's got stationed up to 2, all of our creatures get +1/+1. As long as Maha is in play, all of our other creatures get +1/+1. I should say other for the Lumen class frigate as well. Our Porcelain Gallery side makes all of our creatures base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures we control. That's not an Anthem in a traditional way, but it does make everything big, so it's like one. And then of course Moonshaker Cavalry gives everything a temporary bonus to power and toughness equal to the number of creatures we control. That is our Anthem section. We have a section for Evasion now. So we've seen Surek and Goreclaw, it gives our creatures trample. We've seen Moonshaker Cavalry, and how it gives our creatures flying. Let's talk about Champion of Lambholt. And I feel like this goes in every white and green deck that I make. Champion of Lambholt is a 1/1 human warrior for 1 and double green that says creatures with power less than this creature's power can't block creatures we control. I'll say it again. Creatures our opponents control who have power less than the Champion of Lambholt can't block any of our creatures at all. They can block other opponents' creatures, just none of ours. And whenever another creature we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on the Champion of Lambholt. So if Champion of Lambholt has seen 6 other creatures enter, then it's going to have 7 counters on it, which means none of our opponent's creatures that have power less than 7 can block our creatures at all. So Champion of Lambholt, unanswered, will make our creatures unblockable. I mean, it's enough value on its own. I do want to make mention, this is not in the counters section because it doesn't have a way to put counters on other creatures. It just puts counters on itself. That's why I tag things as counters or not, just to let you know. But yeah, Champion of Lambholt as a way of us being evasive in the sense that our entire board is unblockable, yeah, seems pretty good. Especially when you have Silk in play and the Champion in play. We're going to get 2 counters for casting any creature because we'll cast a creature, Silk will trigger, make a token, Champion will trigger from the token, get a counter, the creature we cast will resolve, Champion will trigger when it enters as well, and now it's even bigger. So that is our Evasion section. Let's talk about protecting our creatures, or ourselves or our permanents, all of the things we want to protect. Distinguished Conjurer gives us a way to protect our creature because we can pay 5 and tap her to flicker something. So that's a good way to stop something from, stop an opponent from targeting us or resolving whatever they've targeted us with to protect our creatures. You know, maybe they're throwing a Doomblade at one of our creatures, so we flicker it instead and the Doomblade fizzles because it no longer has a valid target, that kind of thing. Swiftfoot Boots. Gotta run this. 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives equipped creature hexproof and haste. A great thing to put on either of our commanders, but anything that we value a lot, like maybe Archon of Coronation, that's keeping us from losing life due to damage, giving it hexproof is pretty nice. Kutzil, Malamet Exemplar, makes it so our opponents can't cast spells during our turn. Good way to protect ourselves. Touch the Spirit Realm, of course, lets us slow flicker something, which is really, really nice, because if our opponent casts a board wipe, we just channel Touch the Spirit Realm to protect, let's say it's our commander. Our commander will leave the battlefield, the board wipe will resolve, and then at the end step, our commander will return. So that slow flicker protects us from things like that. Pretty good. Restoration Angel, of course, can protect us with flicker as well. Archon of Coronation protects us specifically because we don't lose life. We don't lose life when we take damage while we're the Monarch. Kogla can protect itself because it gains indestructible, but also protect our humans by bouncing them with the same ability. Pegasus Guardian, rescue the foal. Its adventure is another flicker effect, which can protect our creatures. And of course, we have Dazzling Theater and Prop Room, which is a way of protecting us. Since our creatures untap during everyone's untap step, it means we can swing out and not worry about being shields down, because we're going to untap at the next untap step. At least our creatures will. So, the next section we have is our synergy section. These are cards that work so specifically well in this deck. And I guess I should mention this as well. I'd already mentioned this earlier when we were talking about our Web of Life and Destiny. There are a lot of other cards in the Considering section that are tagged with these. So even though this looks like it's not many cards in the Synergy section, and we have already seen them all, there are other synergistic cards, like I mentioned, in that section below. So Spider Girl is synergistic because she gives us tokens when she leaves the battlefield, which is what we want her to do when we rebuy or web sling her. Kutzil cares about us having creatures that are that have power greater than their base power, so synergistic with our counters and Anthems themes. Pegasus Guardian also cares about our creatures leaving the battlefield, the same way that Spider Girl does, and rewards us with Pegasus tokens when that happens. And of course, the Primeval Protector rewards us, or is synergistic with the fact that our opponents are building things up in response to us building up a big board, so it makes itself cheaper, and then we get to put counters on our things, so we're more easily able to deal with those threats. The last section I want to show you is cheats, because like I mentioned, we have several others in the considering section. We've already talked about the Web of Life and Destiny and how it can cheat creatures in. Really worth rounding this section out if you want to go that route. But even if not, I think this is just one instance of it. Being able to throw out our really big creatures without paying for them seems like a lot of fun and feels good. That covers all of our spells. As usual, we're going to go through our land base. So we're running 22 basics with, of course, the Spider-Man arts, because we need ways to make our check land work, and we want to make sure that in a deck with so many creatures that either have low casting costs or high ones with a lot of pips, we want to make sure that we have plenty of colored mana production. And we're only running a little bit more in the way of green. We could have done like 11-11. This is just fine. So we're running Selesnya Sanctuary, which is a bounce land. If you haven't seen a bounce land, they come in tapped, and when they do, we have to return a land we control to our owner's hand, to its owner's hand, which means we're bouncing one of our lands. Kind of nice in our web slinging deck, but the kickback for all that, what it gets us is that Selesnya Sanctuary taps for 2 mana, a green and a white. So this is really particularly nice if we want to be able to make sure that we have plenty of mana, as we're going along. In addition, the fact that it bounces bounces the land to our hand means we're going to hit our land drop next turn, because we're going to play the land that we bounced. So I really like the bounce lands in Commander. We have Sunpetal Grove. It's a check land. It taps for green or white, but it comes in tapped unless we control a forest or a plains. We've got 22 basics, so 22 of our 100 cards are going to make it so Sunpetal Grove is going to come in untapped. If you want to upgrade this, you could upgrade Sunpetal Grove to Overgrown Farmland, which is the slow land. It comes in tapped only if it's the first or second land you have in play. So it's more likely in this deck to come in untapped than Sunpetal Grove is, but it is more expensive than Sunpetal Grove, and Sunpetal Grove in a deck constructed this way is very likely to come in untapped. We are running Sungrass Prairie as a filter land. It comes in untapped, but it can't tap on its own. It has to have mana paid into it. However, when it does, it makes 2 mana. So we're sort of tapping 2 mana sources to make 2 mana. It just works out that way, filtering our mana. But a nice way to make sure we have both colors that we need. We're running 6 fixing lands. We're going to start by talking about Command Tower. Command Tower is an untapped duel in this deck. It comes in and it taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, just like Arcane Signet, but on a land. So an untapped duel, yeah, we want to run Command Tower in any deck that's got at least 2 colors in it, and in many others as well. We are also running Path of Ancestry, which is like a tapped duel in this deck. It comes in tapped, and it, just like the Command Tower, adds 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, so white or green. But also, if we use that mana to cast a creature spell that shares a type with our commander, we scry 1. It may not surprise you to learn that our commander shares a type with itself. Both of our commanders are spider-human heroes, so whichever one we run in the command zone, of course, the mana we spend from Path of Ancestry to cast either one of those will let us scry. We have 13 other humans in the deck, and 1 other spider that isn't a human, and 3 cards that are both spiders and humans. All of those in addition to our 2 commanders. So we also have Temple of the False God. I know some people aren't into this card. I think it's quite powerful and great for the decks that I run. It taps for 2 colorless mana. It's a soul ring. We call this a soul land. The only drawback is that you need 4 other lands or more to tap it at all. So it needs you to control 5 or more lands, including itself. Which means it's not a soul land early in the game, but it sure is after a few turns. So being able to tap 1 land for 2 mana is very, very powerful. Even if it doesn't accelerate us as fast as we want, we're still going to need that acceleration later as we're drawing cards and casting more creatures, so Temple of the False God is a great include. We also have 3 soft fetch lands. Broker's Hideout and Cabaret Courtyard in our deck do the same thing. They enter, and as soon as they enter, they sacrifice themselves. And then when they do, we get to find a basic forest or plains, or for the Broker's Hideout, an island, which we don't have in the deck. We get to put that onto the battlefield tapped, shuffle, and gain a life. So we play this land, and it automatically rampant growths us and gains us a life. Cabaret Courtyard is the same thing, but instead of finding an island, it could also find a mountain. Neither of those matter in our deck, and it does not violate our commander's color identity rules, so they're the same thing. These are just an Evolving Wilds that we don't hold up to crack whenever we need to. No reason to do so in this deck. Finally, we have Myriad Landscape. Myriad Landscape comes in tapped, and it taps for colorless, but we can also pay 2, tap, and sack it to search our library for 2 basic land cards that share a land type. So in this deck, either 2 plains or 2 forests. We put them on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. So while this is slow, because it comes in tapped, and then in order to do its ability, we have to pay 2 and tap it and sacrifice it, and then these come in tapped, we did play 1 land as our land drop, and then eventually we got 2 lands into play. So it technically is a very slow form of ramp in this deck, and it's worth doing for that reason. Something not as slow is our Pain land. We're running Brushland. It taps for colorless mana, comes in untapped, or we can tap for white or green as long as we're willing to let it do 1 damage to us. We have a couple of sources of life gain, but even without them, Brushland being able to come in untapped and be an untapped duel is worth 1 damage. And most of the time, we're going to end up tapping this just for colorless because we'll have plenty of other sources of colored mana. Even if we do 5, 7, even 10 damage from the Brushland over the course of the game, we're doing that because we're hurting for other colored sources, and so it's worth it to us. I like the pathways, so we have Branchloft Pathway. It is an untapped land that taps for green. That's all it does. Except, it's a modal double-faced card. So we can instead, from our hand, play it on its backside as Boulderloft Pathway, which taps for white. So it is whatever we need it to be in that moment when we play it. This also has a really nice synergy with our bounce land. Because if we say early in the game we have the pathway and we want to play it as Boulderloft Pathway because we need white, then as we're playing, we can play our Selesnya Sanctuary, maybe we've drawn that, we bounce our Boulderloft Pathway, we no longer need it as a white source, so on our next turn when we play it for its front side and its Branchloft Pathway. So we get to choose each time we play it if we have a way to play it multiple times. It's really nice to do so. We're running Temple of Plenty. It's a scry land. It comes in tapped, but it taps for green or white, and when it comes in, we scry 1. So a nice little bit of selection for us. If we wanted to upgrade this, we could sure put in a Surveil land instead. That is Lush Portico. That's the Surveil land for this. I guess I should mention that of all of these, if we wanted to upgrade one of them, I would upgrade the Sungrass Prairie to Temple Garden, which is the shock land. But again, much more expensive than Sungrass Prairie, which is also fine. And then here is the 1 typed duel that we are running. Like I mentioned before, for Karametra, if you wanted to play other typed duels, it would be fine to do so. Canopy Vista is a forest plains, which means inherently it taps for green or white, and it enters tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. So this is the older version of what the slow lands look like. Like I mentioned the overgrown farmland earlier. This one needs the 2 lands that we already control to be basic for it to come in untapped. But if we have those, because we have 22 basic lands, it'll come in untapped and be an untapped duel. And we can find this with Karametra. Karametra will put it into play tapped, but we just found a dual land, that we got to essentially rampant growth into play. That's pretty sweet. So yeah, again, if you wanted to run any of the other typed duels, you certainly could. I think Canopy Vista is the one that fits best in this deck, though. Finally, we have some utility lands. Demolition Field goes in pretty much any one of the decks that I build, just because, you know, I know we're running Acidic Slime, but you want to have the ability to do some targeted interaction with your opponent's lands if they are problematic. You don't need mass land denial, but being able to turn off, like I mentioned, a Maze of Ith or a Rogue's Passage, a Glacial Chasm, a Maze's End. Maze's End, maybe not the best example, but, you know, any of these things that can really mess up our game plan or give our opponent a very large advantage, we should have a way to interact with it, even if it's just one card in our deck. So Demolition Field comes in untapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls. And then they get to go search for a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped and shuffle. And then so do we. So what's really nice about this is it doesn't cost either of us a land. We both get to have a basic to replace their non-basic in our Demolition Field, and those even come in untapped. The only way that that wouldn't happen is if one or both of us doesn't have any more basics in our library. So yeah, I like Demo Field. We have Gavany Township. It comes in untapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, a green and a white, and tap it, so that's essentially 5 mana, but still, it lets us put a counter on each creature we control, and that's in our land base, and it's repeatable. Just a really powerful effect, and worth having in this deck in our land base, just to keep our creatures getting bigger and bigger, and to take advantage of things like Kami of Whispered Hopes, and other things that care about our counters, like Rishkar. Finally, we are also running Rogue's Passage, just in case we need to push some damage in. Maybe we've been able to be lucky with Spider-Man India and attack in the air a lot with Spider-Man India. Maybe we're about to win with commander damage if we can just get in unblockably, and we just can't trigger him to make himself fly again. Well, we can certainly use Rogue's Passage to make him unblockable. Taps for colorless, comes in untapped, but we can also pay 4 and tap it to make a creature unable to be blocked until the end of turn. Pretty nice. And that about sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Spider-Man Commander decks every Thursday through mid-November when the Avatar set drops. So let me know in the comments if there's a specific commander or style of deck you'd like to see me build. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe, and remember, magic is fun. You should play more Magic.